was once a dim, unknown expanse with many shut-in peoples. Each tribe was the other. Each civilization was hemmed by great natural barriers. Steep slopes and snow-clad peaks made high mountains impassable. Vast dry plains by their empty expanse kept apart people dwelling in more fertile areas. Great stretches of treacherous desert sands forbade travel. Timbered wildernesses hid tangled depths through which travel was both dangerous and difficult. Sweeping river floods for a long time could not be crossed. And the greatest of water barriers were the tossing wastes of endless sea. In our country's broad expanse were all the different barriers known to man. Our progress has been due in the main to breaking down these barriers, largely by improving our means of transportation. The 13 colonies as a new nation fell heir to the rich wilderness west to the Mississippi. Later came many other additions of undeveloped land, Louisiana and Florida, Texas, and the Oregon and California territories, and lastly, the Gadsden Purchase. Within 70 years, our country spread 3,000 miles from the Atlantic seaboard to the Pacific. Pioneers began to move into these undeveloped lands, and at once the Appalachian Mountains loomed as a barrier. Further beyond lay dark forests and swift-flowing rivers, and broad, dry plains that sloped upward to the snow-capped mountains, deep gorges, and the deserts of the Rockies. Crude roads through the Appalachians were tedious and unsatisfactory, so the Erie Canal was built to help the westward movement. Meanwhile, that ever-curious and never-satisfied group, the inventors, were improving on James Watt's early steam engine. They caused this new power to turn wheels. They placed these wheels on tracks, and the day of the railroad dawned. Stephenson's locomotive was followed by the DeWitt Clinton, and eventually by the modern railway train. Railroads have contributed more than any other transportation device to the development of our country. The spread of our railroad network is shown by this map. In 1830, an experiment. Within 20 years, a great industry. By 1870, the continent spanned. By 1890, well-established lines of transportation nationwide. Today, all sections of our country closely linked. The invention of the gas engine made possible the automobile, which, in growing from a two-cylinder experiment to today's speedy, powerful vehicle, has contributed amazingly to our country's development within the last 30 years. America's 27 million automobiles have demanded the replacement of roads such as this by a nationwide network, broad and smooth and durable. The growth of our federal highway system is shown on this map, and after it, the development of our state highways. The United States has become the leading industrial nation of the world. Land transportation devices actually move mountains of raw materials from their sources and, aided sometimes by ships on river, lake, and ocean, they carry these materials to factories. Grain from our broad fields is taken in vast quantities to elevators and thence to distant markets by these same giant devices. Long lumber trains wend their way from forest to mill. Great factories are located at strategic points, and these factories depend in turn upon transportation to distribute their finished products. Land transportation ends at great harbor railway terminals. Here, ocean-going ships are waiting to receive travelers on their decks and goods of every description to make up their cargoes for foreign distribution. Dwellers in our cities demand millions of automobiles for transportation. Street railways handle their quota of passengers, supplemented by fleets of taxicabs and buses. Railroads, when crowded off street levels by congested conditions, speed over tracks laid underground or in the air above. Commuters' trains from suburban districts rush into central stations daily with their burden of humanity. The ship, the railroad, and the automobile combine in solving the problem of distributing within the city not only human cargo, but food and merchandise and the other materials necessary to support life. This development of transportation has broken down even the greatest barriers. The hearts of mountains have been pierced by tunnels through which the commerce of a nation rushes swiftly and safely. Mountain sides have been cut open and highways planted there. Where now is the dark barrier of tangled wilderness, it has been pierced by these same transportation ribbons of steel and concrete. Across the once lonely prairie stretches, we now hurl ourselves and our goods with ever-increasing speed and safety. High above broad rivers, we have built strong bridges of steel and stone. We no longer pause in dismay at the water's edge, but cross upon these bridges or on swift-moving boats upon the bosom of the river, so that our streams have become highways now and are no longer barriers. Today, our land transportation devices gather in great numbers near the water's edge and then defeat the floods by crossing swiftly through under-river tunnels from shore to shore. What then of the widespread seas, those last barriers of the earth? They too have been conquered by modern transportation devices. Great ships now take us and our goods to the farthest corners of the earth. They cross the most tempestuous seas safely and in comfort, and within a few days. They defy distance and storm, and bring the world in turn back to us. And lastly, we have scorned all natural barriers of land and sea, and have leaped into the air safely from place to place. Through the air, our continent may now be spanned from coast to coast in less than a single day. Soaring higher than the eagle, we may look down and ignore those barriers which less than a century ago seemed impassable to the struggling traveler on the surface of the earth. Over the intricate map of our railroads and our highways have been blazed the paths now regularly followed by travel of thousands of airplanes. Within the past century, we have solved old transportation problems. Our railways, our automobiles, and ships have helped to develop our country and to make possible our industrial civilization. The demands of our modern life call constantly for greater speed, greater convenience, and greater safety in transportation. This cannot be met satisfactorily by even our finest trains, our largest and fastest ships, nor by present-day aircraft. Speed is most in demand in the work of overcoming the modern barriers of time and space. Our air machines, by almost daily new speed and distance records, bid fair to contribute most in the near future. Who can foretell how much these improvements will contribute within the next century toward breaking down the barriers that have kept men and nations apart?